It's the policies of my government that are criminal. And as long as they continue to fund these wars, continue to make the votes, and they have been, that's criminal. They laugh at you, they fight you, and then you win. And I don't think that's the deal here. I think I'm on the cusp of something different. It's more like the power of love pulls everybody onto the same page. Nobody's winning here. It's understanding. It's the power of love doing what it wants to do in the universe, and that's create peace. I hope that I get a chance then to continue educating on the First Amendment, what it really means. I get it. I think I've laid dead. Every time before I chalk the chalk mark on the floor and lay dead on the floor, I have the First Amendment, a handwritten copy in a heart shape underneath me, and I think sometimes I say I've laid on that for so many hours that I really get it. It's like osmosis. I really get what it means. Continue to act it out, and whatever happens around me happens. I spend an hour sitting in a chair silently with my sign, No More Dollars for War, and then a second hour on the floor where I chalk a victim's body on the floor before I lay down for the die-in part of it. That's really become important to me as a symbolic. So they're hauling me away as a criminal or taking me to jail. But my point is, especially with the chalk, and I will persist with that, is I'm pointing to the fact where the crimes are being committed. And I'm doing it on the floor in my senator's offices. It's the policies of my government that are criminal. And as long as they continue to fund these wars, continue to make the votes, and they have been, that's criminal. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to point out where the crimes are happening. I'm Chris Gaunt. I'm living here on a farm north of Grinnell. I have a long roots of, both of us have a long history of being Iowa farmers, so our parents and their parents are all grown up in this area. And so we are today in just in the last year, I would say the peace work that I've been doing, that I've been called to over probably just the last 8 years. People think, oh, she's been doing this forever, but it's not really true. My call to get involved in peace work came after 9/11/01. In the 70s, when I was graduated from high school and college, I was asleep. But my wake-up call then was 9/11/01, and when those events happened, this country was attacked, and I stood back for a year, and I watched what would be a wave of fear roll across the country, and I remember kind of putting a brace on and immediately saying, no, not me, not to make decisions based on war, because I saw the basic decision that my government made during that time was to seek revenge for those attacks through the military. And I thought there's got to be another way. 12 of us from across the state gathered and spent the weekend, or those 3 days anyway, around that era, studying the Jesus' way of nonviolence. There must be another way, and that's what I spent that time doing. And somehow I must have inhaled that into my beings and my bone. And that has been my motivation ever since. There must be another way. Violence does beget violence. So it's coming down to the idea of resisting with my body. It's what I have, and rooted in faith, but continuing to see my government's policies, and I saw acted out in my own actions on the micro level that was happening in the macro level on my government's responses. My husband to this day remains reluctantly supportive, but I figured out in the last year how incredibly important his financial support has been, and I recognize it more now. The current campaign of die-ins I've been participating in for 9 months now. So all I'm trying to do with my life, the life I have left, I'm 54, so the time I have left, I want to speak out against and use my body, resisting my government policies when it comes to war and torture. The Peaceable Assembly campaign is what, for the last 9 months, never did I think that this would have led to sort of this one-woman die-in. Never was that on my agenda that was happening. But it sort of has, and that's where it is. So I have quite a bit of stuff to look back over. And all it is really is an experiment in nonviolence. And I have learned so much that and I continue to learn it on a daily basis. There's an office in Chicago called Voices for Creative Nonviolence, and back at the beginning of this year, they made the decision to try to involve people all across the country, going to our elected officials and trying to get them to stop funding the war. There was a $33 billion war spending bill pending in the next few months, but we were going to go ahead of time and get the attention of our elected officials and try to get them to, and not just say stop funding the wars. We had a whole thing mapped out of steps, objectives to bring this wars to a close. And it is our elected officials who do hold the power of the vote. Now, some people are a little bit critical of me for continuing to stay with that idea that these two good senators from Iowa, Senators Harkin and Senator, long-serving, hard-working Iowa senators, and I cannot give up on them. I refuse to believe that they can't hear the message and actually act it out before their terms finish, to be the ones to say that, as a matter of principle, that they will begin to vote no on war funding. That is how the wars continue. They're continuing to vote new money time and time again to keep these things going when, my gosh, look around us. There are ways to redirect that military spending that could really do it. So I refuse to believe that and give up on them. Oh, we didn't get responses. A whole group of Iowa citizens didn't get responses until, so that was February, or end of October. And it got into February, and we didn't have responses, so we tried to up the resistance a little bit, and we told them ahead of time that if we didn't have a response, say, by February 22nd, we would come to their offices and stay until we got a response. And that's exactly what we did. A handful of Iowans did that. We ended up kind of silently occupying the offices that day, and I ended up dead on the floor. I'm not sure where all that came about, but that's what happened. This Wednesday will be die-in number 28. Okay. Where I officially did the die-in on the floor, and they had to. What my one insistence was that they will have to remove my body from the federal building, that I wouldn't go out on my own power. And people have argued, well, 5 o'clock closing time, then that's time to go, Chris. And I don't quite go there. I think given enough time and a little more time, people have not seen the First Amendment acted out like this in Iowa before, but I am very secure in knowing that I have a First Amendment right to stay in that office while I'm seeking redress of grievances. If I stay peaceful in the way that I make my grievances known, I just have a little sign on my lap that says "No more dollars for war," and I sit. If I have 4 hours, I sit 2 hours in a chair on Grassley's side and 2 hours on Harkin's side, and the next week I'll do it the opposite. So I think my presence actually makes a calming effect on the whole office. I've spent the month of March becoming friends with every staff member in the office. They know me well, and I think they even love me. We've just got relationships, and I knew that for nonviolence to work, relationships had to be established. So, and I've also established relationships with every security officer in the building. They know me by name as that vegan hog farmer from Grinnell. Yeah, but I have a passionate desire to end the wars, and they know that, and we respect each other. Yeah, a lot of first name basis from the time I walk in the door. Everybody pretty much knows what I'm about. And the First Amendment, understanding that my right to stay past 5, it's getting worked out. In fact, it was working beautifully to get it figured out. But there's this Gandhian thinking that says, first they laugh at you, yeah, dead on my senator's floor, yeah. Even my husband laughed. He says, what are you doing? All right, and then over time, I persisted. Over time, it's like they fight you. I've been to court 3 times now. I've lost every time. First Amendment says I have a right, if I'm peacefully assembled, I have a right to seek redress for grievances against my government. Key word there, against my government. Congress can pass no law. Nobody can abridge that right. That means nobody can cut it short. Right? So if I'm seeking redress against my government for grievances, as long as I'm peacefully assembled, doesn't even say, the First Amendment doesn't even say I have to be lawfully assembled. It's if I'm peacefully assembled, nobody can abridge that right to have my grievances aired. And we've made progress on that, actually. Rob Barron over in Harkin's office one night in June stayed with me until 9 o'clock at night. And I felt like that was an airing of my grievances. And since then, when I go to Harkin's office, I pretty much say, is it okay if I leave when the last person leaves the office tonight? And they pretty much say yes. So I'll sit in the chair for an hour meditating. Basically, I'll lay on the floor for an hour, and when the last person leaves the office, they kind of wake me up, and I deliver letters every time that I hope get delivered to the senators. But that's kind of the way it's been going. Mm. But I don't act out my grievances by going inside the door of my Walmart store when they're about to close and insisting that I stay there until my grievances are aired. No, the First Amendment doesn't give me that right to stay there. The First Amendment gives me the right to seek redress for grievances against my government. So my senator's offices in the federal building, that's the right place to be. Right. Now, my grievances against Walmart, I act them out differently. I've never set foot in this Walmart store. Of May of 2006, I think the Super Walmart in Grinnell opened, and that's how I act out my grievances against Walmart. It seems like we're on the cusp of pockets of people all across this country on the cusp of a new era. It's not, and I'm proud to be acting it out right here in Central Iowa. It's not, the word civil disobedience doesn't really work anymore. It's civil resistance, and I figured that out when I was preparing for the first trial. I defended myself against a trespass charge for laying dead in Harkin's office, for staying there and being hauled away. And I got to trial and I realized I'm not here to change the trespass law. I'm arguing a trespass. Let's say that Diane's is a spinoff of maybe what we did to the sit-ins in the 60s, like at the lunch counters, where there were civil laws on the books that needed to be broken because they were totally unjust, right? Well, all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, I'm charged with trespass. I'm not here. If I lose this trial, I'm not here not going to appeal based on the trespass law. It's not the trespass law I want to change, you know. It's like I pointed out earlier when I make the chalk outline on the floor. It's what we're trying to do across the country today is point out the fact that our government policies are what's criminal. Mm-hmm. So we're calling it civil resistance and using my body to resist those policies in places that we can. So I don't know, maybe the whole thing can tie together.
When's the end?
When's the end of
your action, your activity?
Oh, when the war's in. When I wake up one day and the wars are over. So my Wednesday die-ins, are you asking if they'll continue until then? Yeah. Probably. As I see it at this point. But I kind of sometimes take direction almost daily mm-hmm. about how might be a way to proceed. So, yeah, the whole thing is coming out of my groundedness in spiritual something. Yeah, we each have to find our own path to this. Yeah, it's part of it. So I've never expected anybody else to go to jail for their beliefs, for one thing. I've never expected anybody else to do what I do. I don't really ask for that at all. And we talked about my own actions being basic, but spirit-led. And I don't know, sometimes I picture the nonviolent footsteps of Jesus, and I trying to follow a step at a time and not knowing what the next step is. And so, and I am not going to be one who's going to try to tell somebody else what to do or how to. I guess I know what it is. And I learned this in jail too. Everybody is here on this earth with the gift of life, you know, and everybody has a strand, their own special piece to bring to this movement. And so, but when we bring our own pieces, the molding it together into this beautiful mosaic, the creation of this, taking each strand from each person that puts their strand in and says, I'm here, Spirit, take it. However you name your God, that's, the rest of it is in some other entity's hands. So that's our responsibility, is to bring your strand to the piece and let this universe create this beautiful mosaic out of that. But each of us, that's ends up being really simple. Each of us to bring our own strand to this effort towards peace.